Nobody wants to say this out loud, but having real cash makes life easier in a way your net worth never will. Not your credit limit, not your brokerage account up big on paper, not the equity in your home that you could tap if you were willing to fill out forms, wait 2 weeks, and pay interest for the privilege. I'm talking about actual cash, the boring kind, the kind that just sits there, the kind people love to dunk on because it doesn't feel productive. Money you can access today. Money you can move in minutes. Money that doesn't require permission, paperwork, or perfect timing. Because here's the part nobody likes to admit. There are 2 types of wealth. There's paper wealth, numbers on a screen that make you feel rich as long as nothing goes wrong, and then there's real life wealth, the kind that lets you handle problems instantly, sleep at night, and say no when you need to. Cash is real-life wealth. And if you're already typing inflation in the comments, relax. Yes, I know. I'm not saying cash is the best long-term investment. I'm saying cash does something investments can't do. It makes your life smoother right now, in the real world, where emergencies don't schedule appointments and opportunities don't wait for your money to settle in. And before you jump in screaming inflation like you're about to save the entire economy in my comment section, just pause for a second. Yes, inflation erodes cash. Yes, cash sitting there earning nothing is not optimal. Yes, over long enough timelines, the stock market beats a savings account. I get it. And I can already hear the greatest hits. Cash is trash. Every dollar should be working. You're losing money by not investing. If you're holding cash, you're financially illiterate. Cool, congratulations. You can repeat internet finance slogans. But just hear me out, because those slogans are built for spreadsheets, not for real people living real lives. They assume life is smooth, predictable, convenient. They assume emergencies politely wait until the market is up. They assume opportunities send you a calendar invite and give you 60 days to prepare. That's not how life works. And the people who actually have substantial cash reserves, they're not doing it because they don't understand math. They're doing it because they understand something the fully invested at all times crowd refuses to admit. Sometimes, the best financial move isn't maximizing returns. It's maximizing control. Here's the thesis, and it's simple. Cash eliminates stress, creates options, and buys freedom. Not eventually, not in theory, right now. And cash isn't just money. It's 3 things at once. It's opportunity, because when something good shows up, you can move. It's insurance, because when something bad happens, you don't panic. And it's leverage, because people treat you differently when you can pay, act, and decide immediately. This is what people miss when they obsess over optimization. They're chasing the perfect return on paper while ignoring what real life actually demands: speed, flexibility, and stability. Because the truth is, a perfectly optimized portfolio means nothing if one surprise expense, one job disruption, or one market dip forces you into a bad decision at the worst possible time. Cash doesn't just sit there. Cash keeps you in control. Now let's talk about why this feels like such a controversial thing to say in the first place. Because for years, the mainstream money narrative has been basically one message on repeat: be fully invested at all times. Every dollar working, every cent deployed. No cash sitting around. If you're holding cash, you're wasting it. You're behind. You're doing it wrong. And look, some of that advice is genuinely smart people with good intentions, but let's not pretend there isn't an incentive problem baked into this whole conversation. The loudest voices yelling cash is trash are often the same people whose business model depends on your money staying invested in something. Their fund, their platform, their product, their strategy, their course, their affiliate link, their newsletter portfolio, whatever. Because if you keep cash, you're harder to monetize. Cash is money they can't skim fees from. Cash is money they can't point to on a chart. Cash is money that doesn't generate commissions, management fees, or assets under management. So of course, the cultural message becomes holding cash is stupid. It keeps you permanently deployed, permanently exposed, permanently dependent. Now, to be fair, and this matters, the math isn't wrong. Over long time horizons, investing usually wins. If you're comparing $1 in the market versus $1 under your mattress for 20 or 30 years, the invested dollar has a huge advantage. No argument there. But here's the pivot that never gets respected. Humans don't live in spreadsheets. Life isn't smooth. Life is lumpy. Expenses don't arrive in neat monthly averages. They hit in ugly clumps. Income isn't perfectly stable. Jobs change, clients disappear, health happens, families need you. Markets don't politely rise in a straight line while you calmly stay the course. And that's why the fully invested at all times advice, while mathematically elegant, can be practically brutal. Because the real danger isn't that cash earns less. The real danger is what happens when life punches you in the face at the exact moment your money is hardest to access, and you're forced to make a decision you'd never make if you had liquidity. That's what the optimization crowd misses. Cash isn't about beating the market. It's about not getting cornered by reality. All right, now let me walk you through the part that actually matters. What cash does for your life in the real world. Not in theory, not in a back test. In the messy, inconvenient reality where things break, people get sick, jobs get weird, and opportunities pop up at the worst possible time. First, cash kills emergencies instantly. Stress turns into calm. Let's start with the most basic example that hits everyone sooner or later, your car. Your car breaks down. The mechanic says it's going to be $1,500, maybe $3,000 if it's worse than they think. If you have cash, you handle it the same way you handle a flat tire. You don't enjoy it, but you don't spiral. You pay, you move on, life continues. If you don't have cash, same problem, completely different outcome. Now you're doing the mental gymnastics. Can I put it on a credit card at 20% interest? Do I sell investments right now, even if the market's down? Do I delay the repair and hope it doesn't get worse? Do I borrow from someone and feel that awkward pressure for months? And the cost isn't just financial, it's psychological. With cash, it's an inconvenience. Without cash, it's a full-blown crisis. Same thing with a medical bill, a home repair, a family emergency, a busted phone, a leaking roof. And here's the line most people don't want to accept. These aren't surprises. They're statistical certainties. You know your car will need repairs eventually. You know something in your home will break. You know life will throw you random costs at you. The only question is whether you'll meet those moments with calm or with panic. Second, cash changes your relationship with risk. Options turn into freedom. Here's where it gets deeper. Having real cushion doesn't just help you pay bills. It fundamentally changes the decisions you're able to make. When you have a real cushion, 6 months, 12 months, you stop making decisions from desperation. You can walk away from a toxic job without immediately falling into survival mode. You can take your time finding the next role instead of grabbing the first offer because rent is due. You can negotiate harder because you're not terrified of losing the opportunity. And that negotiation shift is massive, because when you need the deal, you accept bad terms. Now compare two people. Person A has a higher net worth, maybe a big portfolio, maybe home equity, but no liquidity. Everything is tied up. Everything requires selling, borrowing, or waiting. They're wealthy on paper, but they're trapped in real life. Person B has a lower net worth overall, but they've got a meaningful cash cushion. They can handle a gap, they can pivot, they can say no. And in the real world, person B often has more freedom than person A. That's the part the optimization crowd can't measure. Options have value.
Third, cash lets you seize opportunities. Speed turns into upside. Now let's talk about the fun part, because cash isn't only defensive, it's offensive. Opportunities don't show up on your schedule. They show up suddenly, and they require fast action. Think about a market sell-off. When things crash, the best buying opportunities appear at the exact moment most people feel the most fear. People love to say, "I'd buy the dip." But when the dip actually comes, most people can't because they're fully deployed and emotionally rattled. If you have cash available during a sell-off, you can buy when others are forced to watch. Same thing in real estate. A motivated seller needs certainty and speed. If you can close quickly with cash, you can often negotiate a serious discount because you're removing risk for them. No financing delays, no appraisals killing the deal, no "let's wait and see if the bank approves." Just done. And business opportunities are the same. A competitor is liquidating inventory at a ridiculous price. A piece of equipment becomes available at a deep discount, but only if you can pay immediately. A time-sensitive opportunity pops up, and it's basically move now or miss it. Opportunities don't wait for you to liquidate. They don't care that your funds are tied up. They don't give you time to be organized. Cash gives you speed, and speed creates upside. Fourth, cash boosts negotiating power. Certainty turns into discounts. Here's an underrated truth. Cash changes the dynamic of almost every transaction. Sellers and service providers love one thing more than anything: certainty. Cash means immediate payment, no financing risk, fewer contingencies, less paperwork, less chance the deal collapses. And because of that, cash can buy you discounts that don't show up in an interest rate comparison. It's not unusual to get 5 to 10% off a major purchase just by offering to pay immediately and cleanly. On a big expense, that can be thousands saved in one negotiation. And over a lifetime, the total benefit of those moments adds up in a way people completely underestimate. Fifth, cash prevents forced selling. Protection turns into longevity. This is the one that quietly destroys people. The worst-case financial combo is simple: income disruption plus market downturn. You lose your job, your income drops, and the market happens to be down at the same time. If you have no cash reserve, you're forced to sell investments to pay bills. And if you sell during a downturn, you're not just using money, you're locking in losses. You're selling low. You're wrecking your future to survive the present. The person with cash doesn't have to do that. They pay expenses from cash while they recover. They give their investments time to rebound. They don't get forced into the worst decision at the worst time. And for retirees, this matters even more. This is what sequence of returns risk really is. Selling during down years early in retirement can permanently shrink your portfolio in a way it never recovers from. But if you have a cash buffer, 1, 2, even 3 years of expenses, you can avoid selling in down markets. You live off cash while the market recovers, then you replenish when prices are higher. That simple liquidity buffer can add years to a retirement plan, not because it beats the market, but because it helps you avoid being forced to sell at the bottom. So when people say cash is trash, what they really mean is cash doesn't optimize returns on paper. But in real life, cash reduces stress, creates freedom, unlocks opportunity, strengthens negotiation, and protects you from disaster. And that's not trash. That's power. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the one people love to use like a mic drop. Inflation erodes cash. Yes, it does. Absolutely. If inflation is running around 3% and your cash is sitting there earning 0%, you're losing about 3% of purchasing power every year. So if you have $50,000 in cash doing basically nothing, a rough real-world cost is about $1,500 a year in lost purchasing power. If you're earning something, say a high-yield savings account at 4%, and inflation is 3%, then you're basically breaking even in real terms. You might even be slightly ahead depending on taxes, but let's keep it simple. The people yelling about inflation aren't wrong about the math. What they're wrong about is what that math means, because they talk about cash like it's supposed to be some long-term return maximizing asset. It's not. Cash isn't an investment. Cash is insurance. Cash is option value. And you don't judge insurance by whether it outperforms. You judge it by whether it saves you when life hits you. Here's the think about it comparison that ends the whole debate. Let's say you lose $1,000 to $2,000 a year to inflation by holding cash. Annoying? Sure. But that same cash might let you negotiate $5,000 off a car because you can pay immediately, avoid $3,000 in credit card interest because you didn't need to finance an emergency, or jump on a time-sensitive opportunity that nets you $10,000 because you could act fast. So what are we really arguing here? You're worried about the slow drip of inflation while ignoring the very real, very common situations where cash saves you or pays you back all at once. The cost of holding cash is gradual. The benefit of holding cash is often sudden, massive, and perfectly timed. And the real punchline is this. Most people aren't losing money because their cash didn't earn 8%. They're losing money because life forced them into bad decisions, financing emergencies, selling at the bottom, missing opportunities, taking desperate job offers. Cash prevents those mistakes. So yes, cash has a cost, but for most people, up to a reasonable amount, the benefits of liquidity aren't just worth the cost, they completely dwarf it. So the real question isn't, should you have cash? The real question is, how much cash is actually rational for your situation? Because there's no universal number. Anyone who gives you a one-size-fits-all rule is selling simplicity, not truth. How much cash you should hold depends on a few very real variables. Income stability. Is your paycheck predictable or could it disappear overnight? Monthly expenses. What's your burn rate? How expensive is your life to keep running? Risk tolerance. How well do you handle uncertainty without making dumb decisions? Opportunity access. Do deals and opportunities show up in your world or not really? Someone with a stable job, low expenses, and predictable life might not need a massive cushion. Someone self-employed, commission-based, supporting family, or living in a volatile industry, completely different story. So here's a simple framework that actually works in real life. Bucket number 1, the Foundation Emergency Fund. This is non-negotiable. 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in something liquid, safe, and accessible. Not invested, not locked up, not hard to reach. This money exists for one job, to turn emergencies into inconveniences. It's your buffer against car repairs, medical bills, home surprises, short-term income disruptions, whatever. Bucket number 2, the Opportunity and Flexibility Fund. This is where people level up. Once your foundation is solid, you build another cushion, another 3 to 12 months of expenses. This fund is for power, not panic.
It's the money that lets you leave a job without fear. Take your time to find the right next move. Negotiate harder. Seize opportunities when they show up. And act fast when prices are good and time is short. The exact size depends on your life. If your income is stable and opportunities are rare, you might stay closer to the low end. If your income is variable or your world regularly presents deals, business, investing, real estate, then a bigger opportunity fund can make a lot of sense. And for people who are actively hunting opportunities, there's an optional add-on. Keeping a percentage of net worth in cash, not because you're scared, but because you're ready. Some people keep 10%, some keep 20%, some keep more, depending on what they do and what they're trying to capture. The point isn't the exact number. The point is having dry powder when it matters. And yes, after that, invest the rest. Let me be clear, I'm not anti-investing. Once you've built those reserves, the rest of your money should generally be working for you long-term. Retirement accounts, brokerage, real estate, business assets, whatever fits your plan. Because over long horizons, investing matters. But here's the order most people get wrong.
They try to optimize growth before they've built resilience. They invest aggressively while staying fragile. And that's how people end up rich on paper, but one surprise away from chaos. Liquidity comes first if you want strength. Because the goal isn't just to grow your wealth. The goal is to make sure your wealth actually works for your life. And this is the part that never shows up on charts, but might be the most valuable thing cash buys you. Peace. When you have real cash reserves, you sleep differently. You're not lying awake doing worst-case math in your head. You're not checking your account balance like it's a heart monitor. You're not one email, one bill, or one surprise away from panic. You make calmer decisions because you're not operating from fear. And that changes everything. You don't overreact to market volatility because you know you're not forced to sell. You don't tolerate nonsense at work because you know you can walk. You don't feel that constant low-grade anxiety that comes from financial fragility, where everything is fine until it's not. People dramatically underestimate how much of their stress is caused by one simple problem. They have no buffer. Cash is a buffer, and buffers create emotional stability. Now, zoom out for a second, because there's also a bigger truth here that people don't like to talk about. The financial system is designed to extract money from people who don't have it and reward people who do. If you're broke, everything costs more. You pay interest, you pay late fees, you pay overdraft fees, you pay penalties. You get worse terms, you get fewer options. But when you have cash, you avoid the traps. You get flexibility. You get better terms. You get treated differently because you're less desperate. That's not fair. That's just reality. And once you understand that reality, the whole cash debate becomes obvious. Cash isn't just money sitting there. Cash is what keeps you from being squeezed. Cash puts you on the winning side of that dynamic. So here's the bottom line. Simple, blunt, and true. Cash makes life easier in ways spreadsheets don't capture. It reduces stress because emergencies don't turn into crises. It creates opportunities because you can act fast when others can't. It gives you negotiating power because certainty is valuable and people will pay for it in discounts. It protects you from forced selling so you don't destroy long-term wealth to survive short-term chaos. And most importantly, it gives you options. Career options, life options, decision options. And options are freedom. So if you have substantial cash reserves, don't let anyone shame you for it. You're not behind, you're not stupid, you're not financially illiterate. You've prioritized control, flexibility, and security, things that matter more than squeezing every last basis point of return. And if you don't have cash reserves, build them. Before you chase optimization, before you stress about perfect asset allocation, before you worry about the difference between a 7% return and an 8% return. Because a strong cash buffer doesn't just protect your finances, it protects your mind. It protects your choices. It protects your life. The math might hate cash. Real life loves it.